Hello and welcome back. I'm your friendly neighborhood technician. Today I'm going to answer your questions that you had posted on the Q&A short that I had put up. So I'm talking to you from Delicious In and Out. So I'm going to start with that. First is going to be from half B67. Yeah, the 97 E420 that would not start after the top end repair or the top end rebuild. And looking at all those things you replaced and whatnot, what I would do is make sure that you have the correct amount of fuel pressure. So you may be getting some fuel pressure, but make sure that's within spec. You want to use the fuel pressure fitting that's on the front of the fuel rail. Also, if you have the scanner, if there's no codes and you have one that you're able to actually monitor actual values, I would check to see if you actually are getting the crank signal from the crank sensor, the new crank sensor that you replaced, to where it needs to go, if it's actually reading the crank signal. Also, you want to make sure that your fuel injectors are actually injecting, whether they're actually getting the signal to inject the fuel. So you might be getting fuel pressure to the fuel rail, but if nothing's coming out of the injectors, it's not going to run. So other than that, I was going to mention the fuel pressure regulator, but I saw that you had to replace that. Also, you want to make sure you're not getting too much fuel, because if you're getting too much fuel, then also it won't run, because it's just going to be running way too rich, stuff like that. So you want to make sure your fuel pressure is within spec, and you might want to do a fuel delivery test to see how much fuel, if it is injecting, how much fuel is actually injecting when on that also. And I don't think it's going to keep it from running, but you want to make sure that your mass airflow sensor is reading correctly. If it's reading 0 air, I think that it might try to run still using the crank and cam signals. So you might be able to run, but just might not run very well if you don't have your mass airflow signal. So you do want to check that also. So double check your timing also, because you can have compression, but your timing might be off. I mean, that's possible, I guess. So I would definitely check that, and I think that's it right now. Also, your compression is probably, if you have good compression, that's make sure that's within spec. I don't know the spec off the top of my head, but definitely check those things. Get back to me. Tell me what you find. If you can give me more information on the values that you find, stuff like that, I could probably help you further. Okay, the next one is from Adam, who has the 94 E420 that runs, it starts and then dies after about 10 to 15 seconds. And then once it is warmed up and driving, when you come to a stop, then it shakes. So that also could be fuel pressure related. If you're getting too much or too little fuel pressure, again, too much or too little fuel can cause both those concerns, especially the not dying after 10-15 seconds. If your fuel pressure just drops down, then it would do that also. When you do start it, I would need to know how you keep it running, or you just have to keep letting it idle for 15 seconds until it doesn't die, or do you have to keep your foot on the gas to get the to keep the vehicle running? Because if you have to put your foot on the gas and you're opening the throttle valve more and you're getting more air, it could be running too rich, which could be your fuel pressure regulator. Also, those things like to leak out. How does it start? Does it take a long time to start? Does it crank? Does it start pretty quickly, or do you have to crank for quite a while before it actually starts? If you have to crank for a long time before it starts, that could be your fuel pressure regulator. Also, the distributor cap and rotor wouldn't probably not have anything to do with that, because it wouldn't cause the vehicle. If anything was wrong with the distributor cap and rotor, it would be all the time. It wouldn't cause it to die after 10 or 15 seconds. The shaking when you come to a stop, I suppose the distributor cap and rotor could cause that, especially if they're really corroded. The contacts are corroded when the rotor passes the contact in the inside of the distributor. If you're having poor spark, that can cause the engine to shake at idle. Also the mounts. Also, if you're running way too rich, that'll cause it. Also, you could have low compression on one or more cylinders, would definitely cause it to shake at idle, and you might not notice it when you're running, but the compression might not be too low to actually cause a misfire. So you could have okay compression on a cylinder or multiple cylinders, but it's still firing, so it's not going to throw a check engine light, but it would be enough to be able to feel it when it's idling. So especially if it's on one cylinder, that'll do that also. Or if you had multiples, again, you're going to feel that. But yeah, mounts also. But you feel mounts when accelerating, when idling, when, stuff like that. You'd feel the engine a lot more with that. That'd be more of a vibration than a shake. So definitely check those things out. Make sure what if you have a vacuum gate, a vacuum pump, the hand vacuum pump, and you want to take off the vacuum line for the fuel pressure regulator. You want to make sure you're not getting any fuel outside of where the vacuum line attaches, because then if you do, you're getting the fuel is going past the vacuum diaphragm inside the fuel pressure regulator, and that'll cause all kinds of issues also. So check those things out, get back to me, let me know, and I'll try to help you some more. Next is from Kevin Flanagan with the 92 400E, who takes 8 to 9 starts before it actually starts, or 8 to 9 cranks before it actually starts, which could be several things. Also could be the fuel pressure regulator, like I had mentioned, which that would lead to, again, those have caused difficulty starting on multiple vehicles, not just the 119 engine. But also the fuel accumulator down back by the fuel pumps, there's one up there. If that thing goes out, then the fuel pressure just bleeds off. So it might take a while for it to actually build pressure back up, and then which would cause you to have to crank 8 or 9 times before it actually starts. Or the fuel pumps could be going out, so it would take a while for the fuel pumps to actually build fuel pressure before it actually starts. And I just almost saw an accident. So again, yeah, check those things. Again, like I said, for Adam's vehicle, check the fuel pressure regulator. Make sure the fuel pressure, there's no fuel coming out of the vacuum port where the vacuum hose goes on. Also, and you might want to hook up a vacuum or a fuel pressure gauge to the fuel rail, and then after you get your vehicle started and then you turn it off, watch what the fuel pressure does, because if the fuel pressure just bleeds off, then right away, then you probably have an issue somewhere, not really with the fuel pressure regulator, but probably with either the fuel pumps back there or something really back there with the fuel pumps and the fuel pressure accumulator. Because when you turn the engine off, the fuel pressure, it should hold some kind of fuel pressure to aid in starting the vehicle the next time around. So it should hold. It might not hold like 4 or 5 bar or whatever that conversion is in PSI, but it should hold something. That way, the next time you go to start, it doesn't have to crank forever to build the fuel pressure back up. So I would definitely check those out, and then let me know what you find on that, and then I will again try to help you some more. Also, for Mr. Flanagan, you want to make sure when you have the fuel pressure gauge hooked up, you want to monitor how quickly fuel pressure builds, which would be important too. If it's not building fuel pressure fast enough, then you'll want to chase that problem. Okay, next up is TSLA, or Tesla, I'm guessing, Tesla driver, who has the 95 E420, and their concern is a lifter tick, possibly, which is, I'd say, fairly common, especially on Mercedes vehicles. When I first started up the 400E, after I got it towed back to the dealership, it did have a ticking sound that I thought I missed one of the lifters being stuck or something like that. But after I drove it around the block, maybe 2 miles, that was all gone. That noise went away, and it hasn't come back since. But a lot of times I have dealt with vehicles that have sat, especially at the 113 and the 112 motor. When those sit for a bit and then you go to start them again, they can have that loud lifter tick, and usually driving those clears that up. But on the lifters that I had to take out, that were really firm, they wouldn't really compress at all. There's just a bunch of buildup and gunk in there, so it could be the beginning of what's happening with yours, especially if it clears up after driving for a while. It could loosen up, and then once it's cold, it could, the metal could contract and get a little more sticky. So that might be what's going on. So depending on also how frequent your oil changes are, what kind of oil you're using. Maybe switch to a different weight, possibly. I know, like I said, I don't know what your oil change intervals are, so you could try that. Maybe that'll keep the lubrication in there, or in the lifter itself. It could be the oil draining out of the lifter also, and then it takes a second or a while to, but it shouldn't, that actually shouldn't happen, because once you start it, it should almost immediately get oil pressure to those lifters. So that's what I would look at and start to think about with that. And we have another one from Adam. What kind of oil do I use? Right now, I'm using Castrol Synthetic 540 because I had to fill up at my house. I didn't do it at the dealership, which is going to be the Mercedes equivalent Synthetic 540, which may be Mobile One, maybe just a rebranded Mobile One. That's just Mercedes genuine engine oil is what our overhead says. 5W40. So they didn't have Mobile One, the 540, enough for me to fill it up. I think I needed 8.5 quarts. So they didn't have enough, so I just bought the Castrol. So, but I'll be using synthetic 540 for pretty much the life of the car. And the next one is, I apologize if I mispronounce your name. It is Bernard Gelderblom. Hopefully that's close. What are the chances of getting a job if you're from another country in the United States as a technician? I would say the chances are very, very good. Especially if you're an experienced technician, you could pretty much get a job at any dealership you want at this point, like depending on experience level. But you really have to do a lot of research from location to location. A lot of times there's a lot of difference between state to state, and even county to county, and even dealership to dealership. So you could have two dealerships that are 30 miles apart, and they will pay completely different ways. They'll pay two completely different styles, stuff like that. So, but a lot of and also you have to figure out as far as the living expenses, how expensive that's going to be for wherever you are thinking about choosing for a location. Because if the dealership may pay a higher dollar amount per hour, it could be in a more expensive area. So, and you would have to compensate, you would have to live farther away from the dealership to be able to work there. So, especially like in LA area, there's quite a bit of dealerships, but to be able to afford the living expense of LA is just you'd be spending a lot of your paycheck on a place to live, and probably more likely not even be able to afford buying a place because living expenses in LA are a lot more expensive. But the also you got to as far as state to state, you might want to pick a state and figure out your the labor laws can be quite different from state to state, such as California's labor laws are a lot different than, let's say, Arizona. So if you go to Arizona, where they have 3 dealerships in the Phoenix area, their dollar amount per hour is a lot different than California's, but California's cost of living is a lot more. So, but California's minimum wage, their labor laws are a lot different than Arizona's, such as California's labor laws for flat rate technicians that are required to have their own tools. Then the minimum wage is double state minimum wage. So coming up the first of the year, state minimum wage is going to be $15 an hour. So for flat rate technicians, the minimum wage is going to be $30 an hour. So if people are wondering why their car bills are going up, it's because the labor rates are going up and the minimum wage for technicians is going up. And that's everybody. It's not just Mercedes, it's Honda, Hyundai, Toyota, whoever you go to. So that's another thing to look at also. So it's just do some homework. If you have any more questions, definitely ask. But like I said, if you have the experience, you can pretty much go wherever you want and get a job at that at the dealership you're looking for. So because right now there's a shortage of experienced technicians, and a lot of dealerships can definitely use more of them. So I would say if you're thinking about it, definitely look into it, give it a shot. You know, reach out to some dealerships and see what they say. And the last response is going to be to HR. And actually, I did not even know that your whole thing was translated until I read the end of it and I saw it was translated. So I'm amazed that Google Translate works that well. But as far as the LH and the KE Jetronics, the KE Jetronic is the mechanical fuel injection, and the LH electronic is the electronic fuel injection. So you have the 8 fuel injectors and stuff like that for the LH, and the two systems are completely different. Like the KE Jetronic has the fuel distributor with the 8 metal fuel lines coming off of it, and it has the air flap and the intake manifold and stuff like that that measures airflow. Whereas the LH Jetronic has a mass airflow sensor, has a throttle valve, stuff like that. So the two, trying to either diagnose or tune either one is completely different. It's night and day. They're not even related really. The KE Jetronic, you have to use that. There's a little pedestal that you have to drill in. There's a hole in the top when it's brand new. You have to get that out. Then you can adjust the mixture that way. So whereas the LH Jetronic, it does it all on its own. The computer does it all on its own. And as long as your mass airflow readings are okay, and the sensor's reading okay, and your oxygen sensor is reading okay, then it'll figure everything out, and your timing's all right, and you should be good. There's not really anything to set as far as that. So, but as far as that alignment plug, I'm gonna have to look at my car and see if my car has that. And if yours is in Germany, then the European version may or may not be the same as mine, the US version. So I'm gonna have to look at that, and I'll get back to you on that one. But I don't when I redid the lower engine harness on mine, and I had to feed that up there, and I had to take it apart, put it back together. I'm not 100% sure if I noticed anything that stuff like that, an alignment plug or something like that. Maybe I didn't, but I'll see if I can take a look at it, and you can shoot me a comment or a message, and I'll try to respond to that also once I get a chance to look that up. But yeah, like I said, as far as tuning or setting up your KE Jet or your LH Jetronic, there's not really anything to do besides make sure all the parts are in good working order. Well, that's it for this one. Thank you guys for commenting, and I hope that I helped some of you out. Hope I helped. Honestly, I hope I helped all of you out, but at least some of you would be great too. So thank you for watching. Give me that thumbs up, hit subscribe, and make sure you hit the notification icon so you get notifications. So I'll probably do another one of these. It was fun answering questions. So if you have any questions, I'll try to answer that also, but I'll also try to put together another one of these videos. So thanks for watching.